All right, welcome, friends. I see folks coming in here, and we are glad to have you. My name is Kevin Ressler. I'm president and CEO for the Alliance for Health Equity. I've got some friends here today, and we're looking forward to this month's conversation. It's going to be, the title is Careers in Action, Trends and Challenges in Workforce Development. Now, obviously, those of you who are here have heard of this one way or another, but we also welcome those of you who are catching this on a recording later. Thank you for being here, even if it wasn't live. For those of you who are live, there are the functions of the Microsoft Teams there at the top. You'll be able to submit chats, Q&As, and those types of things, and we'll try to work those into the conversation. And that's the goal here, is to have a conversation that invites you into an awareness of some of the different trends that we see, challenges that we see, but also we want you to be a part of that. Yes, this group are experts, but experts in the lives that you're living and the things that many of you may also be working on. So please feel free to engage in that way. Like I said, we are recording this, and so for those of you on a recording, obviously it's not live. You won't be able to do those question and answers, but if you find or see anything of any of these individuals that excites you and maybe you want to partner with, please reach out to our organization, the Alliance for Health Equity, and we'll connect you with these folks so that those opportunities that come up can be manifest and connected with. So, for those of you who have just entered, I'll again repeat, my name is Kevin Ressler. I am the president and CEO of the Alliance for Health Equity, and we are grateful to have you for this eConnects Conversations with Coatesville conversation here today. So I'm going to go around and I'm just going to say, I'm just going to do it in a counterclockwise way. Claude, I'll invite you to introduce yourself. Then Javonna, you're next right away. Just go after that. And then Josh, go after that. So I'll mute myself and let y'all take it.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Claude Cooper. I'm the operations manager at EDSI. I do work out of the Chester County CareerLink, which is located in Exton. At the PA CareerLink, our goal is literally just to be a one-stop shop. We've partnered with the United Way Financial Stability Center. We are the only CareerLink in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that has this type of partnership. And literally at the CareerLink, what we want to do is meet many of your needs as possible. We have all the resources to help customers meet their educational and employment goals, as well as overcome barriers such as financial instability, food insecurity, and mental health needs. So I'm looking forward to this conversation with everybody today. And once again, my name is Claude Cooper.
Hi, everybody. My name is Javonna Wylie, and I am president and CEO at Chester County OIC. OIC stands for Opportunities Industrialization Centers. We always say that's a mouthful, so we say OIC for short. We're 46 years old, founded in 1979, but we have a long legacy connected to the late Reverend Dr. Leon Sullivan, who was very much so a social activist, founded the first OIC in Philadelphia, still existent on North Broad Street. And there's 2 other OICs across the Commonwealth, but we are a collective affiliate of 24 OICs around the nation. We focus on workforce development and adult education to create economic empowerment.
And that's me. Sorry, Kevin, you already said. My name's Joshua Park. I'm the managing director of Scholas Philadelphia. Good to be here. Thanks for the invite, Kevin, Claude, and Javonna. It's great to meet you both too. Let's see. I've lived in the Philadelphia region for about 30 years. I started as a middle school and high school teacher in the Philly public schools, and then eventually was running after school programs at a place called Sylvan Learning Center for a long time. About 10 years ago now, almost 11 years ago now, I got into workforce development in the city, and for the last year, I've been running the Philadelphia campus of Scholas. Scholas is a national nonprofit tech training program looking to unlock potential for folks that are historically disconnected from opportunity, like high quality tech training for in-demand jobs. So we provide no cost tech training to folks in greater Philadelphia. mostly in IT support, cybersecurity, and this year we're trying our hands at a little software engineering work on our campus. Scholas is already a master of software engineering training. We're just trying our hands here in Philly, adding some seats in that space too for folks that are interested. Really excited to be here and join the conversation. I'm sure I'll have time to share a whole lot more about Scholas, but it's great to be here.
Yeah, no, thanks. So for those of you who are tuning in, I want you to understand part of the assembly that we have here for you are different areas of workforce development. You've got industrial, you've got tech, and you have a wide range with CareerLink that tries to think and connect to all of those various components. And so when we think about the future of business, which is the current challenges for employment for individuals, business is changing, not just tech, right? Industrial work is changing. It's adding robotics. It's adding a whole bunch of things that 50, 100 years ago, no one would have imagined when we used the term industrial as we thought about the Industrial Revolution. Here in Coatesville, of course, the city that had steel was such an important component of it. Even that workforce is changing as different things are coming online and processes and opportunities. And so one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we're talking about for Coatesville residents is not to have individuals who come from a particular past, this industrial past, and assume that that determines what their future can be or should be. And also to make sure that when we think about Coatesville and the future of Coatesville, that we also aren't just saying this is who we were, this is saying who can we become. And so with that little intro there, I want to start here with Javonna. You're headquartered in Coatesville. You work across Chester County, but your headquarters are in Coatesville. You're here all the time. I would be curious to hear from you, what are some of the current workforce trends that you're seeing in this area, both specifically Coatesville, but also broader Chester County? What is in demand for now? What do you see is in demand that is yet to come?
Yeah, I think for sure it's interesting looking at trends past and then current. When we moved here in 2018, like our CNA program was very prevalent. A lot of people were interested, right? So healthcare support roles were big, and they still are, but there's been a lot of shifts, I think, past pandemic and things like that. And right now we see transportation is a big thing. It's always been a big thing, but even right now, building our partnership with the County of Chester to develop the Chesco Connects training program and get more drivers. We see that there's going to be some upcoming issues with SEPTA. So what does that look like for people to get to and from where they need to go? Construction, of course, there's a lot of building and development. And I think also with the lifts on education that came up a few years back, where people can get government jobs with high school diplomas, there's a lot of space in government. So just looking at how can we train people and get them prepared for those kind of jobs.
And Joshua, she tapped onto transportation. You're based in Philadelphia, but you have people who come from this area to the Philadelphia campus. They obviously rely on SEPTA or other transportation. But once you get a job in your world, transportation is a little bit of a different barrier or less of a barrier than it used to be, right? So in Coatesville, jobs outside of Coatesville can be a transportation challenge. How does your organization help to see this future of work, digital opportunities, and what does that look like for Scholas?
Well, I think it's really interesting because you hit that is the most complicated thing I can imagine relative to getting a quality job. Is if I don't live in the Coatesville area, so I feel like I'm a little on the outs. I'm glad to have Javonna and Claude here and you to be able to talk about what employment opportunities are actually there. If you're, but I know that of all the good jobs that are in Philadelphia, transportation from that area has got to be the most complicated piece, right? For 8-9 years, I worked for the West Philadelphia Skills Initiative, and we'd have employers come to us and say, we've got these great jobs out in King of Prussia. And people that we were applying to our programs would go, it takes me 2 buses to get to King of Prussia. I don't want to work in King of Prussia. I want to work in my neighborhood. I want to work an L stop away. Right. Now, coming to Scholas, and our reach is greater, right? And so we have folks that come up from Newark down in Delaware and come to take our classes. They're jumping on the train and figuring out that cost and weighing the benefits, right? We have folks who come over from Jersey, and we do have a small percentage of our applicants and learners that come from like that Chester County. But I think that we see a lot more folks coming from the outskirts of our greater Philadelphia region joining our remote training programs, which are fully remote. But I think that sometimes people do that with the hope that they'll be able to get a remote job. And really what I see more and more, even over this past year of leading the Philadelphia campus, that more employers are moving from a remote opportunity to, if you're starting your career in tech, let's say, they want to see you in person at least 2 or 3 days a week. They want to feel you out and vibe you out to be able to build opportunities for you to grow at that employer. So most entry-level roles are still going to be very much in person in the tech industry. That's not to say that you can't find something remote. They exist out there. But I always feel bad kind of for somebody who comes to us thinking, and then I'm going to make all this money and I'm going to work remote all I want. Yeah, you're really going to limit your opportunities if you do that, right?
Yeah, I think it's an important point. And unfortunately, the push back away from remote, and there's a whole bunch of reasons why. Some of it has to do with dinosaurs and leadership and not understanding how to transition their own ability to manage and to observe and to interact and culture build and those things. But it's also the reality is that it's just creating barriers for communities who all of a sudden had barriers lifted. And it's unfortunate to see. Claude, you mentioned before we hopped on here, you mentioned that you had just been at a job fair and it was a lot of folks there. Curious, what were you seeing from a trends perspective there? What do people are you hearing the same thing like Josh is that like people want remote? Were what was the vibe that you had going on there? What were you hearing from folks?
Yeah, so actually that's a great question. Just a couple of things when you talk about, job trends. So like Javonna mentioned, there's definitely healthcare, and like Josh was mentioned with IT as well. But there's also a trend towards, advanced manufacturing. So there were a lot of employers looking for, machinists, operators, et cetera. And one way to get into that as well is this new term out there called micro-credentialing. And, literally in summary, what micro-credentialing is, it's literally a short focused certification program. The good thing about it, it's targeted, it's flexible, and it's industry recognized. So as opposed to going to a 4-year university per se, you can go to a program, that Joshua would offer or OIC would offer and actually get a micro-credential, a certification, and hit the ground running, making substantially amount of more income that you would be making just coming out of high school or with a GED. But yeah, so here again, just to piggyback on that, the trends that I do see, in addition to what we said, would be the advanced manufacturing areas.
Yeah. So I'm always curious, and I just touched on this a little bit from the barriers that being in person is and remote. I think back to after the United States formally ended the evil institution of slavery, but it moved into Jim Crow and it moved into a lot of different forms of repression still in the South, sharecropping and other things that inhibited the ability of Black Americans to be able to build wealth. And there are repercussions to that today. It's not going to be the focus for this, but what I want to ask is, we had what was called the Great Migration. 6 million African Americans moved from the South to the North for job opportunities. Now, as we have another job transition, the digital transition, the deindustrialization, but also the reindustrialization that isn't going, they're not just retooling the same factory in the same town. But it doesn't seem like there's mass migration. It seems like people are demanding that the jobs come to them. For you all in your work, what do you see with regards to willingness of someone to say, I want to do advanced manufacturing, so I'm going to move to where advanced manufacturing is, right? Do people go to live in the suburbs where the business parks are, or are they just saying, this is where my family is and this is where I'm staying? And I'm just curious what that pressure is, that willingness or lack of willingness to migrate yourself or your family to where the new jobs are, and how that's playing into challenges in tooling up the workforces for the businesses, but also getting individuals to accept opportunities that they could do, but maybe they're reticent to trying because of geography. And this is an area here that is really expensive. You cannot necessarily buy a house on an entry-level job. So are people moving? Are they just, I'm curious how those challenges of willingness to migrate for economic opportunity are playing in. Because historically people would do it. It seems to me like today people are less likely to.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to be at the Economic Mobility Summit a few weeks ago that was hosted by the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. Very, very deep, full event, right? But one of the key takeaways that I got from employee surveying and like people surveying that the Fed is doing, and then some work that they did to grab some data from the Brookings Institute. There was a lot of people were saying, like, I don't want to leave where I'm at to find a good job. They want to know what are the good jobs where I'm at and how do I connect to them? To Claude's point, right? Scholas is doing that credentialing work. That's no cost to folks. That would normally cost you $10,000 or $12,000 to go to school to get some of these certifications, and we're doing them boot camp style in 3 to 4 months, which is a commitment, right? We could say it's no cost to the learner, but also it's no cost except for all the time they have to spend to do it, right? Which is a commitment too, and that's why we have like a lot of supports, social workers. We have financial coaches on the team. We have tutors and all this kind of stuff. We have other opportunities, and we try to build partnerships that can provide supports for folks while they're trying to accomplish that commitment. But that credentialing opportunity, people are grabbing onto it a whole lot more because they want to be able to find a good job where they're at. And then the Brookings Institute said the same thing when they followed up on some of those conversations from the Federal Reserve. That's what they saw, that a good job is what people want. So continuing to hear conversations around what equals a good job, usually that means higher pay. Usually that means higher benefits. I mean, we're still seeing in the tech industry, we're seeing that our learners come to us earning about $18,000 to $20,000 a year. And when they leave their first job, they're earning 45 or more. So it's a good start, right? And of course, our work is less about that first attainment and more about that thriving wage attainment when you get further along. But I think the only people that I'm seeing coming through, like when I talk to our learners anecdotally, the only people that are going, hey, I want to travel or I want to go somewhere, are usually people that don't have deep family ties, single people that are a little younger or that are a little more adventurous or whatever it is. Like, it's a very personal decision, obviously, but people that have families and kids or even just are part of a support system, they don't want to go.
Right. I'll piggyback on that as well. So in the CareerLink, one of the roles is it's a computer resource center where we help individuals with their resumes. We help individuals, locate and identify jobs. And there's a question on there. What is your job search radius per se? 25 miles, 35 miles. Okay. And so that's literally the majority of the people that I see want to stay in that area. And so within that area, that kind of goes back to the skill set. Okay. So what can we do to help you succeed in the area that you want to be in? So that's where you go back to the micro-credentialing. So just to piggyback on what you were saying, Joshua, people don't want to leave unless they have to leave.
Yeah, and to add to that, it just sounds like a heavy lift, right? Like, I think a lot of times there just needs to be more grace for people who are moving themselves out of poverty and into the middle class. I think about like a friend that I had from college who's very much so a trust fund baby. And so taking a lot of risks, we're comfortable, right? Because you have that cushion to fall back on. I myself, coming from a working class family, maybe we didn't always have the most wealth, but I knew that my parents had a home. So if things didn't work out, I have a home to go to. So there's cushion, right, when you're taking those risks. But if you don't have those things, if a lot of your family aren't homeowners and a lot of people rent and you get moved around a lot, and essentially your net worth is your network, and that's all you have because you don't have funding or money, I should say. Why would it feel comfortable to take a risk to move somewhere for a job? So I think that was a big part of Chester County OIC moving from Westchester to Coatesville so that we could be right in the heart of the city and where people could access us the most. But some of the models I've seen us have the most success with is when we have enough funding to be able to invest in people having paid work experiences at businesses, because I think sometimes it could be hard or challenging for a business to want to take a risk on an untraditional worker. But if we shift our mindset to think of like untraditional college students and things like that, there's a lot of additional resources built in for untraditional college students. So I think we should consider the same thing for someone that doesn't have maybe a natural pipeline into the workforce. What does it look like to have paid work experiences, to be able to offer the credentials like Joshua and Claude talked about, to offer those support services like Josh talked about, right? Like one thing that was big for us, I know when we had a 3-year young adult program for 18 to 24-year-olds, only 101 out of, or only 30 students out of 101 adults had a driver's license. And so we were getting the manufacturing jobs in Phoenixville and Malvern, right? 30-minute commutes, but nobody could get there. And so we had to go back and say, okay, it's time to start a driver's education program, which is one of our support services. So I think combining all those things, right? And we're only one agency, so we can't do them collectively. We do lean on the CareerLinks and, of course, Alliance for Health Equity and other partners to help us get that done. But just looking at all those different avenues of what it would take to make a person feel comfortable. And that takes time to get them to a place where they could even commute outside of their city, right? 10 minutes, 15 minutes, let alone 30. So
you said, one thing I love, you said your network is your net worth, right? So I opened this up by saying there was the Great Migration. Well, it wasn't 600,000 African Americans moved. It was 6 million Black Americans moved. Why? That meant their whole, not just their family. It wasn't just me and my family, it was me and my family, right? Like it was my cousins and we were all at the same time moving the whole network, not just, sort of a few individuals. And that's an important component to think about is when you move, what do you leave behind? What can you take with you? The other thing that you said was about comfort. And Joshua, you talked about sort of how folks are also need to be sort of comfortable and personal decisions and these all tie into network. I'd like to talk a little bit because I think it's important for our audience here to, if they're not aware of this, to become aware of what's called the cliff effect. So the cliff effect, for those of you who are not aware, is the term that we use when someone takes a small amount of an adjustment of pay and loses a significant amount of social supports usually from government supports. So for instance, one of the steepest cliffs that you can actually end up having is childcare subsidies, losing the CCIS subsidy, the ELRC subsidies. This can actually cost a family between $5,000 and $15,000 a year. And here's the thing about the cliff effect. It's not a graduated scale. So it's literally, if you make 1 penny more a year than those particular metrics have, you lose maybe thousands of dollars, right? And so right now you have federal policy being looked at. SNAP, you're looking, SNAP can cost hundreds of dollars a month for families. Housing assistance, LIHEAP vouchers are being cut back. That can be $1,000 a year, $500 a year. So when we're looking at these policies, you hear work requirements, which sounds great, right? Like people need to work if they're going to be on Medicaid. People need to work if they're going to be on SNAP and those types of things. But the reality is that sometimes taking that job that pays you a little bit more ends up actually harming your ability to both build wealth, to be healthy, to be safe, these types of things that our organization, caring about the social determinants of health, cares deeply about. So, how does this type of thinking play into, as you all are trying to help someone advance, how do you help them get over maybe the hurdle of that fear, right? Because as you said, Joshua, right, like you're maybe going from $18,000 a year to $40,000 a year, but if that's knocking you back $15,000 in subsidies, now it feels like you're doing something that's not necessarily advancing you. But then if you can look at the long picture and you can say, yeah, but you can make $100,000 a year within 5 years, right? How are these conversations being a part? Because for low-income families, particularly generationally poor families, there is a safety net of comfort that is part of what they've grown up with and what they know can be relied on. And so I'm curious how you all are thinking about this transition for individuals that can shift them from generational poverty, but also can be very fearful.
Yeah, there's like a potential for failure to launch, right? You get into a program that's supposed to be jumping you into the next thing, and you go like, when I used to work for Sheila Ireland years ago at the Skills Initiative, she would talk about people tripping at the finish line, you know, just the fear of like what's next, the unknown that you set yourself up for and did all this hard work for. But I think that's generational trauma, you know. I think that's, you know, Sheila would say, you might be thinking too much about the network you're coming from instead of the network you're moving to, right? That that you're living up to the expectations of the network where you just left everybody like behind at, right? As you found an opportunity for yourself. And that can be really hard. I mean, at Scholas, what we try to do, because we are really good at tech training, and we're also really good at soft skills training, right? We have a full professional development curriculum that helps people to, not to teach people brand new things, but really to just align that experience from before into the new target that they have, right? If you're a career changer or you're just trying to get some proof that you do know what you're talking about in tech, like by getting a certification, let's also get your LinkedIn and your resume and your elevator pitch and like really tech focused so you're ready to talk to folks. But that also means in our professional development classes, we also have to talk about imposter syndrome, getting over the fact that you feel like you don't belong there, whatever that is, right? We also have to talk to, encourage people to talk to the financial coach, to make some plans about how they're what their budget looks like now, how they're gonna get through this program where they're in the program Monday through Friday, 9 to 4, right? They're not making any money in the program. It's paid for, but they're not making any money. So how are they gonna accomplish that? And then when you're done, we're launching the job search as you finish, right? But your network is your net worth. So you're building tools to strengthen all of your network. You're connecting to alumni who are getting jobs. There's all sorts of ways that people get that next job. So how do you make sure that you're ready for the lag time? You get a job, you might have to wait to start, all that kind of stuff. One of the ways that Scholas helps people out is through a 0% loan. So folks that come through our IT support class can get a $3,000 loan that gets paid out in 3 payments over the 13-week course. And they don't have to pay that loan back until they're making at least $40,000 a year. And then it's a 3-year repayment at like $86 a month, right? And if you're not making $40,000 a year, you defer it and defer it and defer it. It doesn't hurt your credit. It's built into it. And we've seen a lot of success in that program because that $3,000 is for you to use however you want and to support yourself in any way that you want. And again, having those financial coaches there that can go, let's talk about what you're going to do with your $3,000 and whatever else you have before you, can probably help some folks to get a jump on that benefit cliff, you know?
Well, you mentioned, Joshua, you mentioned before, yeah, you had mentioned before to me that when you told me first about that loan program, that someone bought a car so they could get to your program.
Yeah, in fact, he bought a car and then he sold that car for twice as much as he bought it for, and was like, "Now I have $6,000." So it's a pretty slick move. You know, it's just like whatever you need to do for it. People are using it to pay for their childcare. They're using it to pay for food, meals, transportation, whatever they need it for. And he really did the thing. Yeah, that was Tawe. He crushed it. But yeah.
So just to piggyback onto that, you know. First of all, let me qualify this statement by saying I have not had the opportunity to support somebody in this way. That's number one. Number two, just understand that the unemployment rate in Chester County is right around 3%. So you talk about budgeting. So here at the CareerLink through the United Way, we do have financial navigators. Shout out to them. So I do want to mention this. If somebody were to come to me and say, "Hey, Claude, You've helped me out with this. I have a job offer in front of me, but this is how it's going to impact me. The first thing I would do is, like you said, Josh, what's your budget looking like? Okay. Understand, and I'm a big proponent of self-esteem and confidence. So I would let that individual know, yes, so you have an offer on your table, that means they want to hire you. So let's get your plan together. So this is where we talk about negotiation. Okay. You offered me 40,000, since that's the number we discussed. You offered me 40,000. However, based in my current situation, etc., this is what I need to accept that offer. Okay. Yeah, employers are tight, but going back to that whole understanding that where we are in Chester County, 3% unemployment rate, they do want you, and there is, coming from a hire manager's perspective, there is a range of the first offer, and there's that room to negotiate. How far it is, how much they want you, yeah, that is the risk that you're going to take. But what I would do, I would help that individual based on some facts, and also using artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, Perplexity, whatever's out there. I would formulate a discussion. I would formulate a negotiation or a counter offer with solid facts, not just give me more money because. I would love to work with you. In order for me to be a satisfied and, for the lack of better words, happy employee, this is where I need to come in at, and just have a hard conversation, because to your point, would you really want to take a job that's going to put you back the numbers we've been throwing around, $15,000?
Yeah, it's
So
that's the range. Yeah.
It is real. So if that opportunity presented itself to me, those are the steps that I would follow.
Well, Claude, I love this, right? So, like, think about this as I mean, I'm an employer, right? Many of us have hired people with different levels of employment, but someone comes to me and says, "Listen, you've offered me $40,000. I really want to work with you. I appreciate it. If I take your salary at $40,000, though, I'm going to lose $5,000 of support for childcare and for food. That means my kids are going to be hungry. And by the way, I'm going to be late more frequently to work because something happened with me trying to drop off or pick up my kids for childcare. I want to be a great employee. I don't want to be worrying about whether my kids are hungry. And I don't want to be leaving work early or coming to work late because I need to pick my kids up from a childcare center that's now 20 minutes further than the old one was because it's the only one I can afford. So I'd love to work for you. Would you be able to go $45,000 or $46,000 so that I can make sure that I'm the best employee? The one that I've put myself in front of you as my best effort is what you experience and receive, right? That level of negotiation, I think, for an employer shows responsibility. It shows certainly aptitude and awareness, someone who's budgeting and thinking about those things. I think, Claude, that's absolutely, and I think also using those tools, ChatGPT, AI, whatever it is, to be able to figure out, what is my gap? How much am I going to lose? Because these things aren't easy. It's intentionally vague. The government doesn't make it easy for you to really know what these things are. So I really appreciate that suggestion and bringing up the negotiation, because the other thing that we know this statistically is true, that women and people of color tend to undersell their own value. There's because of historic disparities in pay. I know what my dad made, and that's what helps me to set what I think my market should be. But if your dad was underpaid by 10 or 15%, and you're willing to take another 3 or 4% to get your foot in the door, now you're down 14, 15, 16% to your colleagues. Women, same thing. So that component for low resourced, historically marginalized and disenfranchised and disinherited communities, the negotiation is so much more important than for many of our white colleagues and friends who are coming just systemically at a higher level, and being able to arm yourself with very real facts, real actual. And so for those of you listening, where and how you can help folks who you're helping, who are in front of you, or you yourself, to understand that there's always a range, as Claude said, there's always a range there. And that you deserve to go after it.
Yeah, I don't think I can say any more to what you all just said. I hold those same regards. I think a lot of what you named is like humanizing and normalizing that process from where you are and where you're going. Like me alone, right? I've never had a CEO of a nonprofit. So best believe I was calling all my mentors and all the people throughout the whole process, and just letting, I think, students and those that we educate or come through our doors know that it's normal to feel that way and to try to figure it out. You do need a network of people that are going to help you. And I think that's what OIC is for so many people. I know a lot when we have program graduations, that's one of the things I say to students. I'm like, listen, you got some credentials now. You got some professional development skills that you didn't have 8 weeks ago that set you apart from your peers. So make sure you remember that as you're going through this job search process, as you're networking. One of my favorite stories that I got to share with Kevin was about 2 months ago. We launched our new green energy program in partnership with OIC Philadelphia and the other OICs across the state. We had a big graduation here at Chester County OIC, invited local government, funders, all the things, right? And so the students were so dressed up in their really nice suits that we got from the wardrobe. And the next day they got invited to a press release at OIC Philadelphia. And so it was like a big event. And the students met us there and they saw me and they said, "Miss Javonna, is this a job fair?" And I'm like, well, it's not a job fair, but you see that lady over there, she's the top executive at Pico, right? Like, why are you talking to me? Go talk to her. Like, you don't even have to apply to the job, right? You're creating it. I think during the press release, they started shouting out some of the students because they got to mingle with them. So I'm like, now this person knows you by name. So I think also sometimes remembering people of their worth and reminding them all that they came through to get to this point, and that they're just as valuable as anyone else in the room. So make it happen.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can I jump in? I agree.
Please.
I fully agree with that. I love that, Javonna. I love the way that you name that. Like, why are you talking to me? Like, you should be talking to somebody important who might hire you someday, or might know somebody who might know somebody, right? And like, work your LinkedIn and work your angles, because like that's how I've gotten every job since I learned how to do it. You know, as a 40-something-year-old white dude, I recognized that I had opportunities to fall into for a while. And then at some point I went, that's not how it works. Like, I have to make a decision about what I want my career path to be. And then I got to study how to go get that. And I learned the lessons of the Skills Initiative, which are very similar to the lessons of a whole lot of other good workforce organizations, that they're trying to teach folks like how to be ready, how to set yourself up for success, how to carry confidence. And I think the thing that keeps striking me, though, is like at Scholas, we try to treat the world like we're working in a dual constituency, right? We're trying to serve learners and we're trying to serve employers. And I think the reality is that like it's really hard work to balance those two constituents' needs. And the reality is that if we try to balance them, we all know who has the most power in that group. Right? The employers have the most power. So I think there's something beyond preparing learners to be able to show themselves in a good light when they do get to the right rooms, you know, invite them to those right rooms, the way that Javonna did with her crew, getting them prepped and then bringing them over to that press release, which I heard was really, really cool, and lots of great people in that room. But there's something to be said for good workforce orgs talking to the employers who actually have the good jobs, right? And trying to figure that out and shine a light on those employers. Here in Philly, they have this employer of choice work that they do, where they're trying to highlight organizations that have good paying jobs, that have clear and direct pathways. Because even though there's some space to grow, right? Like if you get a starting job at Penn Medicine, for example, I know, they might say, here's the base salary. And then based on your years of experience, they will just bump that up. It's not a negotiation. They just do that. The thing that you have to know is that if you have years of customer service experience and it's not on your resume, they won't see it. They won't know. But
right, and sometimes people tell you make sure your resume is only a page long, and then you're taking off that first. Like my first job was 6 years at CVS. Right, like it's not on my resume anymore because it was so long ago. But actually, that would count for 6 years of customer service.
And that could be another $1 an hour, which is another $2,000 a year, right? And so you have to know somebody that knows that. Even when I got this role, there was a range on the job description, but I knew people that worked here. I knew the person that did this job before me, and she told me exactly what that range meant, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, that range meant they're going to give you the top, which is great. You know, I was like, that's great. I'm just going to assume I'm getting the top. I didn't even have to fight for it. She was right. But she knew the insider information that help me out. And some employers are going to say, this is how much we pay when you start, and that's all it's going to be. You can say that I want more. You can say that I've got kids at home. You can say that I have to get them to wherever, but you need somebody who knows which jobs are like that, which jobs are going to let you flex, and which jobs you shouldn't go for if they're not going to let you flex, right? So that while you're in training, it's not just about, it is a lot about building your confidence and erasing imposter syndrome as much as one can do that. But it's also about knowing, like, who should you be targeting? Where do you want to go? Who do you know that knows somebody, right? And like, where is there room to have that negotiation? And where is there a space that when you get that job offer, you already know what you want and you knew that they were offering that and you got the job, so you get to say enthusiastically yes and move forward in the next step in your path.
Yeah. And I just want to speak like on maybe like a smaller scale level what you're talking about, Josh, because you speaking just reminded me of my case management days. And I remember one of my first students here in Coatesville, he went through the food bank's Fresh Start Kitchen program. And so he would accept a job, and then a couple days later, he would quit the job, and then he would accept another job and then quit the job. And so one day we were like, what are you doing? Like, why are you accepting all these jobs and then quitting the jobs? He didn't understand the process of, first of all, of understanding that he had the power to pause and say, like, thank you for this offer. Let me get back to you, right? So he was accepting jobs that were in downtown that he couldn't get to because they were chef jobs and he couldn't drive. And, so the bus would stop running before SEPTA came this way at like 11 p.m., right? But he wasn't getting off until midnight, and then he didn't have a ride home, or the wage didn't work. There were a bunch of things where he had never had so many job offers that he was just like, yes. And then he would figure it out as he goes. So I think even when we're talking about negotiation, like just understanding what that looks like, knowing that it is okay to pause and say, thank you for this offer. Could I take a couple days to get back to you? And if you need to go talk to the HR consultant at OIC, or, whoever it is in your network that can kind of help you inform those decisions, that's important to pause and do, because we were so mad at him, and then we thought about it. We were like, well, shame on us, because we didn't teach him that in our professional development training.
Yeah, that's great. Just a couple of things, a couple of points I wrote down. So here at the CareerLink, we do offer a resume writing workshop. And Kevin, we can help anybody out with identifying those skills or those jobs that drop off. There's a way you can do that on your resume. So we don't want to lose those valuable skills. And then, kind of to your point, Josh, yes, you have the employer or the job seeker. So you do have those two hard facts that you're dealing with, right? And so then there's the other stuff out there, okay? And literally to your point, Javonna, that other stuff is recognizing opportunity. Okay, recognizing, hey, I need to go speak to this person. Hey, I need to identify those people in my network. So that goes beyond a soft skill. That's a skill, especially if somebody, especially with closing down and the right age, a lot of these people haven't really been in the job search field, right? So how do we help folks identify opportunities? So they come in, we talk about different things, in our workshop. So I think that's the other piece that, by networking, coming out to various supportive services within your community, you understand, okay, yeah, the job search, but okay, what else can I learn? And here again, one of those biggest things is how to recognize and identify opportunities.
Thanks. Yeah, I just want to mention that because Josh, you talked about this. I grew up in a suburban neighborhood where I was the paper boy. I swam on a swim team that we had in our neighborhood. My first real job, non-paperboy job, was at CVS, which I mentioned. I had the application handed to me at my door at my house because I delivered a paper to the assistant manager. And she knew when my birthday was because her husband called the swim team matches. And she showed up on my birthday and said, happy birthday, here's an application. I turned the application in, and she had misread my birth year, and she gave it to me on my 15th birthday. I had to be 16 to work at CVS. She showed up on my 16th birthday the next year with the application and said, I want you to work for me. You've been a phenomenal paperboy. You've been responsible. You owned all your mistakes whenever you were late. You called, all these things. That network isn't anything that you can manufacture, right? Like you either have it because of where you were or you don't. But you can seek it by developing relationships. But even more so, the rest of us who have opportunity to give should be seeking people outside of our personal social networks, whether that's to directly mentor officially or otherwise, volunteering at places, volunteering at the OIC, CareerLink, mentoring. All these things allow us to take what is literally the result for most of us of the social nepotism, the lottery, the social lottery of where we were born and who we were born to, and taking that undue privilege and finding ways of giving an opportunity to someone who, to equally lack of their own initiative, were born in a different circumstance with different sets of barriers. And I think we just owe it to one another as human beings to expand the social nepotism that we will both knowingly and unknowingly provide. So we have a question here. I want to hop to our good friend here in Coatesville. Everybody knows him and loves him, Lieutenant Roger Alice from the Coatesville Police Department. He's our community police member. He's phenomenal. He's an example of what good policing looks like. And here his question is, how does the panel feel that law enforcement can assist job seekers achieving their goals? Of course, I just did a ride along with Lieutenant Alice the other day, and it was wonderful. We were talking about how they can connect with some of these young folks in high schools and other things. And he said, I didn't know this. Most police forces, you have to be 21 years old before you can actually be hired by the police force. So how can police, or how can law enforcement assist job seekers achieving their goal? Is the question, and I'll open up to you all.
I'll jump in. One of the biggest ways I coach a AAU track team. And one of the biggest ways I would say is for law enforcement, to volunteer that time and coach, mentor, give back so they can see a different side. One of the young guys that I used to coach is now I guess you call them cadets, I would assume, with I think it's the County Police Department. So just so they can see the person outside of the uniform. That's one way that I would strongly suggest that, so they can actually see that there is a balance of community, family, and law enforcement. That would be one of my suggestions.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I know often in our adult program, the Work Enclave, the 5-week professional development program, we have actually Lieutenant Alice come out about twice throughout that training and just talk more about civic engagement, what it is. And I think it's really nice because it's probably one of few times where students get to just have that comfortable interaction where they can just talk freely, understand more about his work, understand his thoughts, his life as an individual and not just as his role. But I do think that the community policing plays a big part in it because of just having that proximity to law enforcement, and then even understanding the process of law enforcement. I know that, Claude just talked about, like, what does it look like to come out to coaching and things like that, or like you talked about being 21 years old, but what is the process to enter different jobs in law enforcement? You only think of one thing when you think of law enforcement, but there's probably multiple careers within that field. So how can we better educate the public on what that process looks like, and how could they get started? What is the pipeline?
Yeah, well, go ahead, Joshua.
I was just going to say, it's so interesting because the thing that both of you started talking about is how law enforcement officers can be in people's real networks, right? Like, how can we be in relationship with one another? Maybe not even because you're a police officer, but because you're just in my community, right? And then what happens from there, right? So the idea of like going out and coaching, or just being an actual community police officer, that like hopefully wherever you're serving, you're knowing the people that are there. And I would say, taking that a step further, it'd be great if law enforcement officers had time or training to learn about what kind of opportunities exist, right? You're talking about communities that are being served by workforce development organizations. Do you know who those organizations are? Can you help those organizations spread the word if they're doing good work? Can you be a part of the network that supports a CareerLink, a part of the network that supports the work of the OIC in Chester, right? That when people are looking, you're able to go, oh, I know Javonna, and like, you should go check this thing out because there's a real opportunity. It all stems, though, from that idea that Claude and Javonna like introduced, which is like, how can they be a part of the network of the people that they're serving in real relationship with them?
And Roger, I see you had that follow-up. They're not necessarily recruiting police officers, but they may have other aspirations. But I think it's the same thing that Joshua just linked together here with Claude and Javonna, which is to say, like, you get inside of their lives in a really interesting way. But look, my original degree of study was justice, peace, and conflict studies. And restorative justice is a large part of my studies. And so, and I've said this to you before, Lieutenant Hollis, their kids get caught doing graffiti, introduce them to an art class, right? Like, how do we connect them to the mural artist who gets hired to do the mural and say, hey, can you teach this kid how to actually use their graffiti skills in a way that is socially, not only socially productive, but maybe they actually can go apply for a public art grant now and they can make money doing the thing that they want to do, right? Like, one of the things I love about tech, if you know this about tech, tech companies often hire hackers, people who actually break into their network, because those are the ones who know how to fix the vulnerabilities that they didn't even know they put out there, right? So it's this restorative practice to say, what are the things that you're doing? What are the behaviors you're doing that the manifestation of are seen as a social deviance? But the actual skill set behind it could have a social benefit. And so I think if law enforcement working with magistrate magisterial justices and other parts of the court system said, how do we take these young folks who have energy and excitement and they want to do these things, but they're misplaced or misdirected in unproductive ways? You're at the front line of that to be able to pull, especially if it's a moment where you don't have to arrest that kid, right? And be like, hey, I know I see you hanging out here all the time. And, I see you making money in ways that maybe aren't great to make money. Have you thought about the ways in which you are a salesperson and that you could go make a commission somewhere? And the same skills you have hustling on the street here are the same skills that will make you a $150,000 a year pharmaceutical rep. You're literally still selling drugs. You're just doing it in a way that you're going to get a six-figure salary and a couple of awards a year. So I think if we think about people less as the outcome of what they're doing and more as the skill sets that lead them to whatever outcome, you can shift people. It's the same thing with what you're doing, Joshua, right? You're taking some folks who maybe have particular skills in customer service because they work at a restaurant or they work at, wherever, and you're turning them into IT help desk folks, right? It's just transforming. Javonna, you got someone who just like loves tooling around in a car, right? Now you're helping them all of a sudden become a mechanic. Or a diesel mechanic, or they're working in a different space. Claude, you're doing the same thing. Everybody is really doing the same thing. If we're successful in workforce development, it's really just providing people an opportunity to take who they are and who they're developing to be and put it in a way that our society sees as an economically productive place in our community. So we got just about 6 minutes left, and I like to make sure that you all can share what you want, however you want. So let's go around and we'll do it reverse order. So just about a minute or two. Joshua, anything about your organization, yourself personally, folks you want to give information, then Javonna, then Claude, and then I'll close.
Yeah, great. It's so good to have this conversation. I really appreciate the atmosphere here, Kevin, that you set, and appreciate Asa for making all the connections. I love creating pathways and opportunities. I'm a networker. One of the greatest compliments I got a few years ago was from somebody named Shana Savage at Urban Technology Project when she told me that I was a generous connector. And man, it was like everything I wanted to be ever since I met Sheila Ireland 10 years ago and thought, how does she know so many people? And 10 years in, you go, I think I know a lot of people. It just feels good to be able to support really quality pathways. And I'm in love with what Scholas does and what they're capable of doing. And I'm in love with the connections that I get to help people make. But the most important thing to me is being a part of a greater Philadelphia regional workforce system, being able to support folks in finding the connection to the space that they want to be in. So I would just say, follow me on LinkedIn. If you're looking for a job and you find that I know somebody that you're trying to connect to, reach out, because I'm always happy. Like I'm a big believer. Connect people when you can, and if you can't, just say I can't do that. And that's how you expand. You yes or no, you do the thing, you ask somebody for a favor. Sometimes they can help and it feels great. Sometimes they can't, and that's okay. So reach out to me. I'm happy to help with folks, whatever they're doing, and just appreciate the space to chat today.
Does that mean I'm next? Okay. So it's been really great being here with everyone today. It was my first time meeting Josh, so loved hearing more about his journey and Scholas. And I would say the same thing for OIC, right? I've been with OIC for a decade, so have loved this mission for a long time, especially talking about how it was started, how it was founded by Reverend Leon Sullivan, and just the movement in itself. I love that no matter what OIC you go to, we all have the same thing in mind, but we have our own little groove to how we do it. And it's very much so part of our culture. How Reverend Sullivan led is how I aspire to lead, developing leaders, not just through our programs, but even on our own workforce. A lot of our staff have their own journeys. Some of our staff we've hired on after being in our programs. And so we have a really great model that works. And I'm always urging our employer partners to do the same, to think differently about their hiring practices, to create employee resource groups for untraditional workers and things like that, and really push job retention in our region, because it takes a collective to do it. So thank you, Kevin, for having me on the platform. Love being here today.
All right. I'll just say one thing. The Bible talks about, God knows the plans of your heart, right? And knock, the door should be open, seek and you shall find. So the biggest thing is that network, right? Go out and get the support that you need. Go out and ask the question. Go out and be the best person you can possibly be. And guess what? In order to do that, you do need help. You do need support. You do need coaching, etc. Nobody gets to where they are by themselves. There's a proverb that says we are constantly standing on the shoulders of our ancestors, right? So make sure you go out and get the help and support that you need. Once again, thanks everybody. If you need some immediate support, I am at the PA CareerLink in Chester County, right across the street from Collegiate High School. Thank you.
So thank you everybody for tuning in, whether you were here live or whether you're catching this on the recording. We appreciate you giving us your time and your attention. Our next conversation is on July 23rd, same time, it'll be 11 to 12. The topic is education, access, and quality. But don't forget that in the off months, we do our eConnects Expanded. And so we take one of the panelists and we go deeper into a one-on-one podcast with myself. And so Javonna and I have actually already recorded it, secret. Sometimes the things aren't recorded in order. But so look for that. We'll be setting out. It's a really fun conversation that Javonna and I had. She did an amazing job of keeping me interesting. And so I thank you, Javonna. I thank you, Joshua. I thank you, Claude. I thank you, audience. Again, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention, and I appreciate the way you are all doing your part to make our world a better place. It may be rainy today, but it's bright wherever you are, making someone's life a little bit easier, a little bit lighter, and a little bit more productive in the end. Thank you, everybody. Take care. We'll see you next time.